Most of you know this already. This is not new. You don't need me to remind you of the pace of change or the rapid changes that are occurring on the global scene, whether it's the man-made or so-called natural world. Both are in a state of extreme flux at the present time. And if you don't believe that, I would challenge you that you've been living under a rock or in a cave somewhere. And because it's more than obvious. It's almost a given. Every day there's exotic storms or earthquakes or uh, oil spills or nuclear accidents or new revelations about how our food is poisoning us because of the way it's being processed, etc. I could go through a long, long list of ways that the old world is crumbling, but I'm going to also focus on ways that a new world is emerging. Uh, we are awakening, we are waking up, and we're waking up to who we really are, which is powerful, creative, spiritual beings. We are the ones we've been waiting for. That's a popular expression you've probably heard before. We are the ones we've been waiting for, and now we are actualizing our powerful, creative, spiritual selves. Not just talking about it or thinking about it or spinning intellectual theories or um, hoping and wishing that we could be in our higher selves or feeling frustrated because every once in a while we get a glimpse of our higher selves and then go back to our human ego selves. That may have been the truth for a lot of us for many years. But that is changing now, and it's changing permanently. And by the portal shift of December 2012, which is a little bit like 15 months away, it's not very long, not very far away at all. Um, by the time we go through that portal shift, there will be absolutely no doubt whatsoever that we are in the greatest shift since time with humanity on Earth began. I say humanity on Earth because humanity's been here for over 10 million years. Those of you who are familiar with my work and the work of my guides know that uh, that the history of humanity on Earth goes back at least 10 million years, and if you wanted to get technical, you could say it goes back almost 100 million years when the first life forms were brought to this planet, intelligent life forms, and they started testing out whether this would be a good place to incarnate and so on and so forth. All of this is in the earlier books, so I'm not going to spend much time on it. Let's go ahead and discuss what's going to occur on Earth between the year 2012 and 2030. And we're going to focus in on 2012 to 2015 initially, because that's a very powerful and tumultuous time. A lot of upheaval, a lot of rapid, radical change. Really, between now and 2015 is our first segment we're going to look at. Now, in the book, I go through the most likely scenarios, what I call a sample timeline in the first chapter, and I go all the way to 2030 in one chapter, just hitting the highlights. And then I go into depth on how to bring that about in the rest of the book, basically. Because if we don't have a practical way to create the new golden age on Earth, then we're really leaving a lot up to our spirit guides, and I'm going to say a lot to chance, although that's not the right word to use. It's kind of like the ego will expect God or the angels or the archangels to do it all, or the ego will go into um, we'll go into the other extreme, which is trying to force everything to happen. There seem to be two extremes on planet Earth when it comes to creating. Number one is you either try to force things to happen, pound the pavement to try and make things happen, or you expect everything to just fall into your lap where you don't have to do anything. Those are the two extremes. One is trusting God explicitly and not recognizing that we are extensions of God in the physical plane, and that God acts, moves, and has being through us. The other extreme is forgetting our connection with God and thinking we have to do it all ourselves. So, so we don't have to do it all ourselves. We have lots and lots of help. But we do need to take responsibility for our own state of consciousness. We need to clear our psychological issues. We need to work on ourselves. We need to look at our shadow self. We need to work with our shadow self. And this is the main task in front of us at this time in order to prepare for this new golden age, is to clean house, get our house in order. That means any place within us that we are not clear, that we have old traumas that we haven't cleared, old core negative beliefs we haven't worked on. That's what we've got to do first, is work on those core negative beliefs, those core emotional issues, are the things which cause the ego to take over and try to run our lives. And we know what that is. Every one of us knows what that looks like when ego is trying to run our lives. We're trying to force things to happen, or we're wishing and hoping things were different. We're making ourselves wrong. We're judging and criticizing ourselves. We're not trusting in the natural flow of life. These are many of the symptoms of letting the ego run rampant in our life. So that's number one, and it's an inner change that we have to make within each one of us. We need to be the change we want to see in the world by first examining our consciousness, using whatever tools and techniques are appropriate to heal our consciousness, whether it's rebirthing, reconnection, Reiki, the 3 R's, whether it's meditation, prayer, affirmation, visualization, yoga, and especially breathing. Breathing runs through a lot of the tools and techniques. Hypnotherapy, psychotherapy, these are valuable tools. I don't recommend only psychotherapy, but sometimes it's called for. Working with a therapist who's maybe been through some of the same emotional issues that you've been through, that we've been through, and can help us to move through a particular block, such as constantly seeking the approval of others, being afraid to step out on our own and make our own decisions, because what will our friends think? What will our family think? What will our mate or spouse think? Um, so these are some of the issues that we are being confronted with right now, and I have yet to meet anybody in the last 6 months that's not dealing with these issues to some degree. Now, some people, their life seems to be cruising right along, and there's not a lot of challenges, but the vast majority of us in the human plane have got tremendous issues and seeming obstacles to deal with, and that's as planned. That is part of the plan. We have about 15 months until the portal shift, and the plan is to get our house in order for this shift, and that means clearing, purifying, cleansing, whatever word you want to use for it, and it's going to get more intense if we are not committed to healing our body, our emotions, our mind, and our subtle levels, the astral, etheric, and causal plane. Now, I talk a lot about the astral, etheric, and causal planes in my workshops, in my sessions, and to some extent in my books. We're not going to dive deeply into the individual levels today and how they interact, except to say that one of the most powerful tools involves integrating what I call the 6 lower bodies. And so that's one of the most powerful ways of being ready for this shift, is integrating the 6 lower bodies. So I know some of you are thinking, well, I wished he would hurry up and get to whether there's going to be earthquakes in Indonesia or fires in California or economic collapse in the United States. Well, I cover all of those in a fair amount of detail in the new book, and I'm going to talk a little bit about those things today. But before I do, I just want to build the foundation. I want to cover the basics, and the basics are that if we want to be in a safe place, a happy place, a harmonious place in the years to come, we have to put our own house in order first. So that is the first priority. And that's why I'm elaborating a little bit on the inner changes first before we take a look at the outer changes. So I'm going to explain how prophecy works and why it's impossible to be 100% accurate, but highly possible to be close to 100% accurate in terms of the big picture. It's a lot easier to predict the big picture than it is the little picture. The little picture relates to our individual lives, our little lives on planet Earth. If you come to me for a reading, one person, and you come to me for a session, it's a lot harder to predict your life over the next few years than it is to predict the general trends for humanity and for the world. The reason for that is that when I or another visionary psychic seer looks at the future, we look at what is called the composite consciousness of humanity. That means we look at what we have in common as a species, what we're creating in common in our consciousness, and then we project that into what I call future timelines. And we identify what are called the dominant timelines, the things that are most likely to happen based on what's being created right now through the collective consciousness of humanity. So there are 3 dominant timelines that show up when I and others look into the future timelines. What we see are all these possible and probable realities, but there are 3 of them that have a lot of energy on them. They have a lot of power and creativity going into them. And so these are the 3 timelines that almost every person on Earth will experience to one degree or another. And I'm going to talk about them briefly because they're so important. The vast majority of humanity, somewhere between 70 and 80% of humanity, is going to experience what I call the third density dominant timeline. The third density dominant timeline is the one where things get worse and worse on Earth, or seemingly worse and worse. I realize that's a judgmental word, but life seems to degrade. The quality of life seems to degrade for 70 to 80% of humanity. Why? Because the Earth is moving into a 4th density dominant timeline herself. What does that mean? It means that the souls who are aligned with Mother Earth, who are tuned in to the vibration of the planet, who are living in harmony with her vibration, will be in 4th density, not 3rd. If you remain in 3rd density, it will become harder and harder to function as a human being on planet Earth.